Here back in September. Not too many. Okay. Well, we're increasing the presence of strings on the campus now. We're really happy to have the St Lawrence String Quartet with us. They are the ensemble in residence at Stanford, have been since 1999. And they tour and they talk and they teach and they play all kinds of music, old and new, and they play in very entertaining and profound and unusual and typical ways as well. They're all over the map, actually, as musical explorers and performers. And when we think about classical music, we usually think about the three Bs, Bach, Brahms, and Beethoven, and it occurred to me that Haydn is actually the fourth B, 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 and H. Because H, in the German scheme of naming notes, is B, and B is actually B flat. So all those three Bs are so flat, but Haydn's the real B. So we'll let the quartet explain more about why Haydn is so important and interesting even in these times, as well as in his own time. I want to introduce the players. We have Geoff Nuttall, Owen Dalby, Lesley Robertson, and Chris Costanza. Okay? So without further ado, the St Lawrence String Quartet, Haydn Discoverers.
Mark. Wow. The great thing about Haydn specifically is that he rewards constant listening, constant work. I laugh anew every time we play that movement, and we probably played it 300 times. So for us today, and I know I have a mix. How many string quartet players in the audience? A few, yeah, I know. So there's some hardcore people, and how many people who have no idea what Opus 20 Haydn means? Okay, cool, yeah, that's about what I was expecting. So this whole thing started, we play string quartet concerts for a living, basically. We guide the youth of Stanford, musically speaking, I suppose, as well. But years ago, we discovered some really basic point, and that was that we liked Haydn string quartets a lot more than our students in our audience did. And it was somewhat frustrating, because we came off stage thinking, that was the most incredible experience ever. It's just such great music. It's moving and powerful and hilarious. And the audience was just like glazed over. And the students never wanted to play Haydn. So we figured, firstly, and this is sort of important, we realized that it's not Haydn's fault. That was a first step, right? And then it became, so how do we get people to get this like we do? Shouldn't be that hard. It was so frustrating. Haydn, here's the key in many ways. Haydn, more than any other composer, especially classical period composer, works really well on a number of levels. So like if you put it on the automatic play thing at a cocktail party in the background, it sounds great. Everybody feels slightly smarter and there's an aura up. You know what I mean? Like it works, it really does. And more, and this is a whole question at where we are, how does technology affect how we appreciate and listen and experience music? Haydn, more than anyone, benefits, almost demands, if you want the hairs on the back of your neck to stand up, active participation, active listening, following the game. And we discovered that the more that you could open that window, whether you're a music expert string quartet player or someone who's coming from zero experience with the genre, it's gettable. And it makes the act of listening and or playing so much more pleasurable. And Haydn wrote these pieces for that kind of involvement, both playing and listening. So a little bit, this is slightly boring, but it's important. History. Opus 20 changed the musical landscape as we know it. Its influence is hard to overestimate. Let me just read this, because it's, well, when a famous musicologist says something, it somehow carries more weight than a string quartet player. This is Sir Donald Francis Tovey, probably the preeminent musicologist in history, and this is over 100 years ago he was saying this. Every page of the 6 Opus 20 quartets is of historic and aesthetic importance. There's perhaps no other opus in the history of instrumental music which has achieved so much and so quietly. Back to the point, many of you have never heard these before, never mind heard of them. But what happened and what he did in 1772 or so really did change music history. You mentioned Brahms. He owned the original manuscript, annotated all sorts of things. Beethoven hand-copied all 6 of these quartet parts himself, arranged one for string orchestra before he decided to challenge the genre and write his Opus 18. Mozart, of course, was a close friend and passionate follower of Haydn and knew these quartets intimately before writing his own. So for something that had so much impact on the greatest musicians in history, it's somewhat remarkable that you don't hear them that much and they have very little impact on students. So back to our original problem, getting people to appreciate and get excited about Haydn quartets like we do. And so we came up with this plan both for students and audiences that we would sort of go through a piece. In this case, we're going to play Opus 20 number 2. So please stay for the end because you'll get a whole performance. But before we play the piece through, we're just going to go through each movement. There are 4 movements, and sort of explain why we think it's incredible, what to listen for, just giving you a few little windows. And it's amazing how much just that forcing yourself to participate actively in the process of music instead of letting it wash over you and thinking about lunch, which is fine in a sense. Do you understand where I'm coming from here? So here's the model. And this is, Haydn was so great on so many levels, but he both created the form and the genre, the idea of 4 people, 2 violins, viola, and cello. He created the structural form, 4 movements, sonata form, and we'll go there in a second. A minuet, which was a dance form he took from a country dance and made it part of the concert hall. A slow movement, usually a song, and a final movement, for the most part, up until Opus 20, was a rondo or presto finale like the one we just played. Exuberant, boisterous fun. So that's your model. Story, first movement. Aria or dance, second movement, replacing each other. So dance, song, and then party. That was the model that he set up himself and wrote many quartets before 1772. But Opus 20 totally changed everything, and on so many levels. And we're talking about democracy a lot these days. This is the first time where the quartet really became a totally democratic thing. You'll hear Opus 20 number 2 beginning, shockingly, and I know for us the shock is somewhat tempered. Up until this point, string quartet playing was tune, diva, backup band. Yeah? So what happens to begin this quartet signifies a really cataclysmic change in what the quartet could be. So here's the opening of Opus 20 number 2. So I love that. What am I doing at the beginning? Nothing. And again, not shocking at all to you, I know, but that would have been like amazing for the players and audiences of the day. Cello solo to begin, the viola is playing the bass, and then all of a sudden everything's turned upside down. The roles are changing. And throughout this movement, you're going to hear that. We're going to call this the first theme in our story. You'll hear that played by everyone in the group at various times. So it becomes, as Goethe said, a discussion amongst 4 equals, amongst 4 friends, as opposed to a backup band with star soloist. So the idea of storytelling in music is something that's really important to follow. And we're going to throw both simple and complicated examples and see how your listening skills are. Oh. You know, we played at Esterhazy, where Haydn was lucky enough to be composer and musician in residence for over 40 years, and leaf blowers were not a big thing there. It's a beautiful place. So that's our first theme material, and what he's done is set up the topic of cello as star right off the bat. So listen to what happens next, and that simple concept of equal opportunity tune. So we've had solo, me sitting out, I get to answer, play the solo. The next thing that happens in measure 15 is Owen plays the solo, I play the bass, Chris is following along, but he decides this is really his show. And listen to the pyrotechnics that happen from this. Isn't that cool? So within the first 22 bars of this, you could look at it as a beautiful C major. Welcome to our show. This is lovely. I mean, you as well. But it's also suddenly all these things are happening. So tune, not tune, answer, bass, discussion, show off. It's all about me. Response. Hey, I can do that too. And this is happening. So the difference between letting this music wash over you and say, hey, check that out. The cello's playing the tune. There's the answer. Bass, not, crazy lick. And then your ears are attuned and what could possibly happen next. So to set up our story, and in terms of story, you need characters, right? That first tune that Chris plays is our first subject, our first character. Later on in the movement, we have what we call our second subject. And in this case, it's in the form of a duet. So Owen and I are one group, and we're responding with the viola and cello, Lesley and Chris. So that's a totally different type of subject, but in the same sort of world harmonically. So to set this up so you can nod knowingly to your friend and neighbors, we're going to play, and you're not going to be tested on this sonata form, but it's really helpful to follow along. So what he does is called the exposition, basically introducing the two characters. You've just heard first theme cello, second theme duet, and then we get to the end of the exposition, and we're going to repeat that material, just so you can really get it in your ears. You can understand these characters, because what's going to happen next is what we call a development, where we start to dig deeper into who these people really are. So just so you can nod knowingly, we're going to play the end of the exposition, this first section, and then we're going to repeat. So just find yourself this simple act of hearing this lovely C major cadence, it's great, and then return home to cello solo and just say, oh, I get it. That's the end of the exposition, and they're going to repeat. Are you with this? I mean, it's really simple, but it's hard to stress enough how important those moments are to go, oh yeah, I get it. Now, and this is why Haydn is so great on another level, the basic principle of how it makes you feel. So what's the vibe at the end of that movement? Pretty lovely, joyful, everything's great today, tremendous. We repeat, we're feeling good about ourselves. We've had these two characters, but they're really in the same tonal language. So again, if you're listening actively, and it works on so many levels, listening actively to material, who's playing what, and listening actively in a way, simply, how does it make me feel? Because in the end, that's what this music is about. So get that in your body. We're going to play the end of the exposition. You're expecting this lovely C major, and of course it's all about the setup. We go into the middle section of development, and it's a different animal. So what just happened? Our whole world changed. And again, if you're not really with it and living these moments, that shock. So specifically what just happened, we went from C major to this minor, devastating, scary moment, unrelated, you think, in many ways. And this is where the extra credit happens. So here is what Chris and I are playing. So we're bashing at each other back and forth. Can anyone remember where that may come from? Because it's the point of these stories that everybody's connected. All the characters turn into something else. Remember our first theme? If you break it down, just this moment, and that becomes... So he's taken what was a sunny, lovely, joyful first theme, distilled part of it, and turned it into this really angry discussion back and forth. He even sets that up as a cadence at the end of the first section. Just that moment in time. And you can feel the mind of Haydn. Oh, that could become something really scary. Extra credit. What's Owen doing here? Check this out. This is like insanity. I love that moment. It's so great. Remember Chris's crazy virtuoso lick? It was joyful and exuberant, but that stuck in Haydn's brain. He said, I'm going to turn that into fear to accompany this duet. So you think it's totally unrelated, and it is emotionally, but it's all connected and all ties together. And that brings up the big question, technologically speaking. How much does the ear actually hear these connections when you're listening? We get it, and the question is, the more you listen actively, the more of this stuff you will get, even if you don't realize it. And the more you learn, the more you dig, the better Haydn gets at effortlessly combining these aspects. Okay, so we go through this development, and remember our second tune, our second subject, it was so joyful and lovely. So that character comes back in this development section after this terrorizing opening, but it's transformed. It's such a simple concept to take a character who is lovely and calm and joyful and turn it into something. The same person who you thought you knew has now become nasty, angry, and in minor. And again, it's really easy to describe. He takes the tune and he turns it into minor, but it's much more than that. It's how does it make you feel, and making that connection about something you thought you knew really well turns around the next day to be totally different. And it's a simple compositional technique, but it's so powerful emotionally. Now, we're going to return home. And on your test, this would be the recapitulation. And we're going to set it up for you. Here's the return home. You're going to go, hopefully, gasp knowingly, oh, we're home, we're through this scary development. We're back to this incredible cello solo. And this is where, again, Haydn separates himself from other composers of the era. Normally, the recapitulation, the return home, would be an exact repeat of that initial material. So you feel good about it, but already Haydn's brain is working. So listen to what happens and see if you can identify what's different about our return home than the original version. So what happened? I jumped in. I love that moment. It's like the diva got shut down the first time, but I was so excited upon repetition of that first theme, I said, I'm coming on top of you this time with the same little motive he had. It's such a, you could just feel his brain working. And I love that moment every time we get there. So that, again, it's really simple, right? You don't have to have any musical training. You can hear that as return home, nod knowingly, and then, what's he doing? Why is he playing that? He's not supposed to be playing that. That wasn't in the first bit. And then it creates a whole other world, a different discussion of that opening material. So that's our story, first movement. And you're expecting at this point either a dance or a beautiful aria, a tune that you can sing. And this is what Haydn lays down for us. So he marks this movement adagio, capriccio. So capricious in the fact that it's not light and airy, but quickly changing in terms of character. And the drama is really Beethovenian. This is one of these movements that shook the foundation of music history. This is romantic music 50 years before late Beethoven. So what just happened at that opening? How are our ears doing? This is a remarkable, yet again, very simple technique. Did we hear the beautiful cello solo? So we have this unison opening, right? Everybody's playing the same thing, C minor, like a Greek chorus, crying out. And then what happened? Cello solo. Anybody hear what the cello solo actually was in terms of tune? That's pretty cool. So here's our opening tune. And here's Chris's tune, Alone. Same, right? Isn't that cool? But you don't hear it as the same because Haydn has harmonized it. And underneath Chris, playing that same melody that we yelled to the hilltops, becomes this painful, intimate, supported by this harmony. But it's the same tune. It continues. Gets me every time. So what happens next is a really, again, simple in description but really powerful and Beethovenian. That last bar that we just played doesn't actually end how we ended it. This is what Haydn wrote. Here's Chris's last bar of solo. So if you've dozed off to sleep at that point, hopefully you will awaken. Again, the shock of not just the dynamic difference, the gestural difference, this incredibly incisive rhythmic gesture, and that plays back and forth throughout this movement. Let's just do the middle section, which is so great. And this is simple expectation. We were talking about this earlier, like with students. Hey, theory. Music theory, 1-5-1, the basic concepts. You don't really have to know it, but you all feel it even if you don't think you do. So here's a cadence in the middle of this movement, and you expect this. So that's just simply, as we call it, 5, G major chord. And then C minor wants to go home. So whether you know it or not, as a group of active listeners, you're really wanting that to happen in the air. And that's, of course, not what Haydn does. So, have you prepared your gasp of amazement? Something like, oh, that would be good. So here's that same cadence, again, listening actively, feeling it, wanting to go back home to that brooding C minor and what Haydn shows us. Get my aria, but it's both incredibly beautiful and really weird that it appears out of nowhere in the middle of this super dramatic, crazy movement. But again, if you're not following the game, it'll just all seem like a lovely wash of string quartet. And that's where, back to my original comment, this music can be either devastating or just simply lovely. But you have to really take part in the match, as it were, to get it. So, expectation again. Here's the end of the movement. This cadence will be familiar when we get there. And we expect, and we get. Dance mode. This is the third movement which arrives. Does that opening remind you of any, no hint intended, Scottish instrument? Yeah. So he brings out the bagpipes. So we've gone from Greek chorus, beautiful aria, shocking, loud and soft, cadence, expectation, to this minuet with bagpipes. And it's Haydn again, a little bit of history. This is occurring right in the middle of this gallant period where music was really, well, emotion bad, folk music bad, dirty, complexities of Baroque era, Bach and Handel, bad. And in this one opus, Opus 20, Haydn returns to all of that. He reconnects to folk music. He specifically reconnects to the kind of human emotion that was frowned upon up until that point. Within 3 years, emotional journey like this Capriccio movement shocked the music world and really wasn't bested or even matched until late Beethoven. And in a final movement, get ready for it, he writes a full 4-part fugue. See, it didn't have the effect I was really going. But remember what, I don't know if you were here, or some of you weren't here when we started, that was a rondo finale, super fun, jubilant, joyful. That was expected. And to play a fugue, in this case, and this is that amalgam of technology and emotion. And fugal writing, of course, and Bach did it better than anyone else, but Haydn is showing off here in a way that's somewhat unprecedented. Because not only does he write a 4-part fugue, the fugue has 4 subjects. Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, again, some of you know what a fugue is and how it's put together. Some of you don't. It doesn't really matter. But the subject, or basically, like in the first movement, there were 2 characters, 2 themes. In this case, there are 4 separate characters. So to set it up and just to sort of sharpen your ears, so to speak. We're going to do a little exercise. The first subject of this fugue is the thing you hear right off the bat. So our first game is simply to identify who's playing that and in what order. I'll give you a hint. We all get to do it once right off the bat. Now, what makes this challenging, of course, all the other subjects are going on at the same time. So do you accept your assignment? Yes. Okay, here we go. Okay, how'd we do? What was the order? Obviously, me first. Who was second? Uh-oh.
The viola did play next, but not that material.
Uh-huh.
It goes from left to right.
Correct, yeah. So,
Exactly.
I mean, this, again, it's really hard because Owen's right. The viola played, but it was playing a different topic, a different subject simultaneously. So it's hard enough to hear. So it was first violin, second violin, viola, cello. You all got that. Now, the challenge is to hear all these other subjects happening simultaneously. So the second character is our second subject. Not the most incredible thing, but it's a different flavor. Third one. And the fourth one is easily identifiable, sort of spiky. That's it. So, again, I don't expect miracles, but listening to this fugue in a way is really different than listening to polyphonic music, music with tune and accompaniment. It's mathematical in the sense that you can do both, enjoy it as music and follow the game. Who's playing what when? Who has the first subject? How are the answers going? Where does it lead us? And to make it even more, well, crazy is perhaps the wrong word, groundbreaking, Haydn says, sempre sotto voce. So we always play really quietly. And that creates this long-term expectation of, A, what's going on? Why are we playing a fugue in this movie? And why are we playing softly the entire time? And what will happen? Hopefully you'll still be here by the end of this performance to find out. So I think we've set it up. This is Haydn Opus 20 number 2. Just for your future listening and discovery, 6 quartets in the set. 3 of them end with fugues, 3 of them end with traditional rondo finales, of which we played 1 to open this set. They all contain, the frustrating thing is, we were talking about it earlier, we really want to just come here and play all 6 and just keep going, because every turn there's something amazing and something really moving and powerful. And it's music that many of you have never heard before, which always sort of blows my mind. So spread the word. Evangelical is a little strong, but it really does support the kind of passionate advocacy that we hope we bring to it. Haydn is God.